Welcome to the AI Silicon Valley podcast. This is Rajesh Kadam, and with my co-host Eric Nielsen from here. We are in Palo Alto, California, covering the latest AI developments of the week. Eric, what do we have this week?
Well, let me tell you, it's always going on. There's the AI info wars are continuing to accelerate as always. Whether we call them info wars or model wars, or financing wars, things are still being announced, and this week is no different. Elon and the crew announced Grok 3. So if you haven't spent time, I know we haven't talked about Grok very much, but that's
Right.
that's Elon's company that's building AI engine, and it's called Grok. And I don't know if you know the history of Grok, Rajesh, but
Mm.
Grok was used a lot in the Unix world back in the day, and
Oh,
it
I
came
see.
from a movie in like 1960s or 70s. You can actually Wikipedia
Oh,
Grok, Grok, but it means to understand things fully, right?
mm.
And so we used to say, "Oh, I grok that,"
Right.
right? And that was a term the old Unix guys, Unix Expo and Usenix and all these kernel guys used to say, "Oh yeah, I grok that," right? And
Mm.
so they're doing a throwback to computer science when they say
Gotcha.
grok, right? Which is
Gotcha.
to understand things. The way he describes it is it should be an AI that answers the questions to the meaning of the universe, right?
Right.
A
Right.
hitchhiker guides the galaxy. What's the meaning of the universe? 43 is
40,
the
42
answer,
or 43.
43 or
Yeah.
42, whatever it is, 28. So yeah, they announced their new model and their new engine, and
Right.
of course they come out and they say it's faster, better,
Right.
exceeds OpenAI's O model, and
Right.
all the other models are they produced a chart that says they're amazing,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah, I think it was released probably early this week on Tuesday, right? So, but yeah, I haven't heard it. I haven't. It hasn't gotten a ton of press yet, so it's gonna be interesting. But yes, I do remember them showing a bunch of benchmarks
Well,
and
this
how
is
they're
this is
doing
the
better.
problem of being late to the game, because if you really look at it, they are late to the AI game,
Mm,
right? I
mm,
mean, Elon funded OpenAI, but then walked away from it, and
right,
then went off focusing on his own little car business, and building the AI engine for the cars, right,
right,
for self driving. And
right,
I think he got a couple of years behind, right, and
mm,
now he's playing catch up.
right,
And it's
right.
okay, his technology probably will catch up.
Mm,
But as we know, first mover advantage is
is real,
about awareness, right?
right,
And about you get the name recognition, OpenAI, ChatGPT,
right,
and it doesn't matter how many times you call it Grok,
right.
you might not be able to move that. And so the news cycle certainly does not support Elon when it comes to AI. He's
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
news for so many other reasons
That's
these
true.
days that
That is very
this
true.
is going to overshadow what he's doing in AI.
Yes, there's more interesting, spicy stuff going on.
Right, right.
Things being announced by him about him. So yeah, no, I completely agree. And just on the name Grok, there's another chip company, all right, called GROQ. That's building AI inference chips as well. AI
Mm,
chips, both
right.
training and inference. I'm not sure whether it's emphasis on training or inference, but about 4 or 5 months ago, they were in the news because they were able to put a bunch of, I think, a few racks and chips together to have superior performance on like one particular model. I forget which one, on the chat GPT models, one of those chat GPT models, and then their performance was like 10x faster than on an NVIDIA chip, and they raised about 600 million on the back of that, actually. So but yeah, any case, so there's a bit of confusion here with names.
Yeah, in
um
that space, speaking of odd announcements in the chip space, Microsoft announced this week
oh yeah.
a quantum chip that will do, supposedly the architecture will do up to 1 million qubits, right? So
What does that
they're
mean?
that
Yeah, help us understand.
well, basically a bit is, an 8 bits is a byte, right?
Mm,
So a bit is an on and off, right?
mm,
So in qubits world, it's just a single bit. So when we have a 64-bit chip that's doing 64 bits continuous in your iPhone, right?
mm-hmm,
It's a 3 gigahertz iPhone that
mm-hmm,
has 64 lines going through it. Each
mm-hmm,
line carries a bit, right?
mm-hmm,
And so 64 billion times a second,
mm-hmm,
those bits get calculated, or that's how your phone is working.
mm,
Well, when you talk about quantum, you have to entangle each one of these bits,
mm,
right? And
mm.
so they only have like 5 qubits quantum implementations right now, which is like 5 bits period, right? Like not 64 bits every gigahertz,
Five.
like yeah, five, right?
Wow.
Like not 64. Yeah. And so as they get more qubits, these qubits act instantaneously at the speed of light. And so the idea is if you can get enough bits, at the speed of light interacting, then you could have a very, very, very fast computer. But only the biggest number of qubits anybody's been able to build is like 128 bits, right, or qubits, and that's not enough to do very much, right? Like
so that number 128 is much bigger than
128K, 128 bits that can do something, in a cycle. But it's not like a 64-bit lines where all bits are going and happening gigahertz at a time. So I think that the reality is no one's been able to architect beyond a very small, tiny computer.
So
right?
we are far away from any
Right.
sort of commercial implications on this. I think
Right.
what I read was that it's all kind of researchy and
Theoretical. That's what quantum computing is. But
Right.
nonetheless, they announced it, and it's another quote chip spec, which could change change AI if that ever shows up.
if that shows up. That's
Anyway,
awesome.
that's
awesome.
a little bit off track, but that was in the news as well. Right?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I'm going to cover a couple of things here. Funding. It's been I've seen some giant rounds happen this week, all for folks who do AI workloads. Not all, but like 2-3 of them. One was Together AI. They raised $300 million, Series B, and Together AI is like a again AI workload platform, right, where people go and build things and use it for inferencing. Another one was Lambda, which is also been one of the earlier ones. They've raised their $480 million around Series D, I believe. All right, so that's another one. Another platform called Baston, Basten, and that's a $75 million Series C. Again for AI workloads. So it's insane. 3 different platforms. All, I mean, I'm sure there's of course differences under the hood, but essentially serving the same purpose, which is running AI workloads. So these are literally potentially competing against the hyperscalers. Like you have Azure, Google, and Amazon today, right? I mean, one could think of these other players as a new AI first stack. Hyperscaler stack. That's kind of how I'm reading this. So
it's interesting because if you look at the money that they're throwing around and you listen to the Grok announcement, you can go look at YouTube. Elon's doing the Grok announcement with the Grok team.
Right, I saw that.
And what they said was interesting was they did a little video of how they're scaling out, and their secret sauce for Grok is the ability to build data centers. So they talked about how quickly they were able to build a 10,000 square foot. I don't know the number.
Yeah, in Memphis, right?
Yeah.
Data
center, and how quickly they can build, and that they were able to build their new data center in 4.5 months or 5 months out the door from beginning to end, and that the race is to put enough GPUs together to build the next generation models, because it just takes an immense amount of GPU power to make these new models. And they see, Elon's good at building car factories and these mega gigafactories, and he's great at building. And so, obviously Starship and the whole spaceport and all that in Texas it's massive cranes and massive building projects. And so the winner of AI might actually be who can build fast enough, right? And to your point of raising $300 million to build enough data centers to actually compute the models that you need to compute. It's fascinating.
It is interesting. I mean, talking about data centers, actually the whole Stargate project that Trump and Larry Ellison and Sam Altman announced, right, a couple of 2-3 weeks ago, I guess. So OpenAI is, as part of that sort of initiative, they are launching or building 16 data centers in 16 different states in the U.S. So that's a similar effort here, right? Like to what we are talking about with what Elon Musk is capable of doing, right?
Right.
It's interesting. I mean, I think definitely it's very clear that you need compute. There is no doubt about it. And I think on the back of building these data centers, we have all this nuclear power that's needed, etc. So, I mean, it is very clear we need to build more infrastructure. But as DeepSeek shows, right?
Or you make an algorithm that doesn't need GPU compute, right?
Right. So that's another sort of parallel swim lane of development, right? Where people who don't have access to these kind of chips, which AKA China, right? I think we saw some dramatic improvement. So I think it's going to be interesting.
And that's where the quantum stuff does come in, or at least new paradigms for processing, because it's it's kind of like the old days when you had these big mainframes, and now
Right.
your iPhone does what the mainframe does, and you could see in 15 or 20 years
Yeah.
as compute architectures get faster and faster and smaller and and scaled out more, maybe the cost of doing AI models 20 years from now will fit on your phone, right?
Right.
Like instead of
Right.
having a massive data center, you'll be able to run that, generate your
course.
AI model in real time on your phone,
Right.
right? And it's just a teraflop or whatever gigahertz, but would do
Yes.
Tera, what's picohertz?
No
Yeah,
idea.
we do a picohertz,
Right.
CPU that's on your phone now can do a lot of that work, and they have GPUs built in, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera.
Right. No.
So
No.
it
I
is
mean,
interesting to see the race right now for construction
yes.
and
Yes.
funding for that type of construction,
That is true. That is true. I think I'm sure the 300
which
million that Together
which is
AI
a
is raising. Yeah.
different model than Silicon Valley used to be, which is you used to raise money for software engineers. The
Mm.
bulk of the money you were raising, as a VC, was to have enough engineers to build whatever application you were building, right?
Right.
But if
Right.
you look at the money now, the software engineering component is not really the big piece, right?
I mean, yeah.
You still need a
Infra.
team of
Yeah.
100 engineers or whatever, 200 engineers building the actual models, or what I call the framework for the models. But
Right. Right.
but now you actually need just data center,
Data centers. Yeah. There's a lot
right?
of infrastructure spending that is probably a little bit newer. You have a point actually. I don't know how it breaks up, right? Like what was payroll as a percentage of overall spend, but yeah. I mean, I think I am totally
No, and
with
that
you.
was the point of Stargate. When you looked at the announcement they did with Stargate with
Yeah.
Trump in
Yeah.
the White House with Oracle and other Larry Ellison and
Yeah.
OpenAI guys, when I looked at the dollar spent, it was 80% was going towards just building data centers. That's what the announcement was. And Trump liked that because he likes to build things, right? Like this is right up his alley. He's like,
Right.
I don't think he understands AI for anything, but he's like, ooh, construction, building, dollars,
That's right.
workers, construction workers, union guys. This is good for votes for me. I think that's where he
Right.
comes at it from.
Right. 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 Yeah. 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 So moving on, the
Yeah.
flip side of things getting funded. There was a startup that built a pin that would go on your LAPO and that would listen to conversations, etc., and do AI on top of it. Humane, I think it was called, and that thing has died. Their assets were sold for about 116 million to HP, and the number they raised, I'm sure, is much more. And I think it had some ex-Apple founders, perhaps, like some famed design guys on the team. So, but I don't
Where
remember now.
technology goes to die.
Yeah,
Hewlett Packard.
so that's out of
You know what they do? They buy it because they want the engineers,
right.
right? They get the
Mm.
org because
Yes,
there's
they
a
are.
lot of good talent there, and it's a way to hire a large
Good
number of
talent.
good talent.
That's true. I mean, in fact, the article said they are folding into HP into an innovation lab, I think.
Mhm.
So quickly moving on, two folks who were central to OpenAI over the last few years, Meera Marathi, who was their CTO for a little bit. She has gone on to form a new company. It was in stealth mode, etc. Now I think I forget the name. Now it's actually she has attracted a bunch of very talented engineers, and she's forming a company. And Ilya Sutsevkar, who was one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and very key to some of the early developments. He's raising at a astounding $30 billion valuation, and for all intents and purposes, there isn't much. I think, as far as we know, there isn't anything much to show for it as of now. But insane. It just shows the amount of interest people have, and I think with funding, venture-backed funding, I mean, a lot of it comes down to founders and the kind of credibility that they can.
Yeah, I was going to say it's
yeah,
really the war between the brilliant and the brilliant, right? Because if you've ever been to MIT or Carnegie Mellon or Stanford, right, like the engineers that are there are just one-offs, right? And their brains just work at a whole nother level. Right?
Right.
So if you can get one of those that understands AI and understands how it is and is that smart,
Yeah.
you can give them 20 billion and get in the game, right?
Right. I think not to get sidetracked, but two startups in the code generation space. There's Codium and there's Cursor, and Cursor has done 0 to 100 million in ARR in about 12 months, and that's sort of the talk of the town. Both of them are ex MIT. I mean, MIT
Right.
alum, so definitely there's a case in point there.
Well, and this leads into our topic for the show today, which is go to market, right? Like, how are these guys that are raising these billions going to go to market and get to market, and what's the funding model to this? But before we get to that, I got a little bit more
Yes.
and more kibitzing here that we can talk about. One of the things that I heard this week that was interesting, and I can't wait to talk about go to market because it does bring this all back to reality.
Yes.
But before we do that, manipulating the AI, I heard a good story about how. And I won't mention names of who it was, but what they were doing was they were going in to ChatGPT, right, and just asking questions and feeding it data about their products and their company, right? And they were feeding it fake stuff or over marketed stuff, like, oh, we're great, we're the market leader, write a whole paper and submit it, right? So that. And they were actively training the model.
I see.
Right?
Right.
Because,
sure.
ChatGPT trains,
This
right?
is
and
a bit of SEO, SEO tactics.
Yeah, SEO tactics on your AI, right?
Right.
Which I thought was pretty interesting, right? That people are now figuring out that you can go start to do marketing in the AI engines, right? SEO, but it's not really SEO. It's manipulation of the data set and the learning model.
Yes,
right?
yes. And I'm a little.
And they said it works.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. They were like, this 100% works because as soon as we started doing this, actively training the models, right? Then they come back and ask the models if somebody else, Tab go set up another account and ask the model about our company or about this or that, and sure,
interesting.
It was. They were like, it's fantastically working.
Wow.
Right? Which I was like,
I wouldn't have expected that, but I think part of this, I think you need scale as well. Who knows? I mean,
who knows?
the whole SEO stuff is SEO for optimization, search optimization. It is also SEO actually, search engine optimization. When somebody searches for something on an AI engine, I think it's sort of the same tactics. But
we've done a little of that when it came to if we had bloggers produce like 100 blogs on a topic, right? Then Google would go through and see all those blogs and then organize that data, right, and bake that into what the links were, and it would count how many links were back to our web property. So if you had a lot of bloggers that were adding links back to our property, that would accelerate our search engine results, right? Because, and so we did that. We'd get 500 bloggers and go right on this topic and give them link backs to our website, right? And we would reward them for doing link backs in their blogs.
Classic.
And that's classic SEO. Manipulating SEO. Well, same kind of principle, but on the AI, you get 1,000 people that go in and feed it a document that has certain characteristics in it, and if everybody goes and does that in the AI engine, right. A month later, lo and behold, if you ask it generically about this company, all of a sudden you're going to get that information back because it's learning.
Yes, it is learning,
especially on greenfield topics, right?
Right. I think on greenfield topics, it's probably easier to do. Right. We'll have to. I mean, that's
a whole show.
That's a whole show. That's a topic for another show entirely. Right. But so let's frame our discussion today around AI GTM, right? What is AI go to market, right? First of all, right? We gotta tease that apart, and then this is not only about AI companies, right? Anybody who is thinking of going to market, how can AI help them, right? Be it a e-commerce person running an e-commerce store, be it a large IBM or Snowflake or some large enterprise B2B company, right? Or could be a retailer like Unilever or Procter & Gamble, right? Like, so how is this all going to sort of pan out, right? Is kind of what we want to explore, Eric. So what do you want to
maybe you should frame a couple of the terms around go to market, like what are the things you need to know about when you're talking about go to market, like?
Yes, so I think we have the marketing pieces and the selling pieces, right? So marketing and sales, and when we think of B2B, right, within the B2B space, you typically bring in leads, you generate leads, build pipeline, and then at some point folks within sales, right, take on those accounts, pipeline, take on that pipeline and actually generate opportunities out of it and close those leads, right? So that's how it typically goes, right? And then we generate these leads from different sources, including social, right? Some of the stuff that you do, or webinars, or right? Trade shows, etc. Right? Like so. That's on a sort of a B2B context, right? In B2C, I think the scene would be slightly different, right? So we kind of funnel the show today AI B2B GTM, right? Like and
Right.
GTM generally is
And
referred to,
so
yeah.
this is just how do the AI vendors go to market and get businesses to use their services? Is that what we're talking about?
No, not just AI vendors. I'm going to say even if you're a non-AI vendor, right? You're a
Okay.
traditional company like Oracle,
Okay.
right?
So
How
how do
is
you go to
AI
market with your AI offerings or using AI to go to market with your own products?
using AI to go to market with your
With
own
your own
products?
products. Okay. All
That's
right.
right. Because there's a bunch of there's so much offering that's available. I mean, and we can start with ChatGPT, right? Like
Sure.
you go to ChatGPT as you were mentioning, just a little while ago.
Right.
It's free, right? You go in and say, "Hey, write me some copy," right? Product
Mm-hmm.
marketing copy for my product X, right? And it'll come up with something, right? And you take that and maybe go to Claude and refine it and make it a little more human, right? Because Claude writes language differently. So you take that and then go, like maybe generate 10 different ad copies for your Google AdWords ad copy, right?
Right.
Right, and so on and so forth, right? So all of this without any other tool other than ChatGPT, right? Now that's scenario one. Scenario two.
Well, and I'll throw in an interesting
Yes.
scenario I heard when we were talking about marketing. It's like typically we would do a marketing campaign and then we would also build a microsite, right? To have a call to action to come into your microsite. And you can actually ask ChatGPT to write the microsite code.
Code,
right?
right.
So not only tell me how to build a campaign for my product XYZ, but then also build me a microsite that would be where we could send the leads.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, the fact that it can write code. My only question is, it cannot host it as of now, probably.
No,
And there are,
no, that's right.
yeah, but there are AI tools right now actually where they do the whole full stack
But it
thing,
gives
right?
you the PHP and the framework. It gives
Yes.
you everything you would need, right?
Yes.
It's getting very smart at that.
Right? Correct. Absolutely. So, I think that's what we want to discuss, Eric. At least that was what was on my mind, right?
Sure.
And one of the things is I think marketers and especially marketers, right? I mean, sales guys also need to use AI, obviously, right? But I think there are so many offerings out there, right? And so the question becomes, okay, where do I start? What do I do? And so on and so forth. So maybe we start with copy and copy generation, right? Like so, I think a couple of big players that come to mind for me is Copy AI and Jasper, right? These are tools and platforms that were actually fairly early in the game. If I'm not wrong, they started, both of these, Copy and Jasper, started in the 21-22 timeframe, 2021-22, and it was pretty early, right? Before actually ChatGPT came to the scene, meaning in November of 22, right? Like which is when like the whole world woke up to the potential of what things can be like. So these guys use transformers, even maybe GPT models, GPT-2, 2.5, and so on in the back end, and then we're generating copy, and they garnered a lot of users actually, right? But when GPT came along, I mean ChatGPT, they lost a bunch of users because it was a free service. So I don't need to go pay anybody to use anything, right? So I think that was the sort of genesis on the GTM side of things. I mean, it was used by a lot of people, but like if you're a marketer or a sales guy, you can use it to write up an email, write product marketing copy or email copy, ad copy, etc. Right? So I think that's kind of where it began.
I know that we used Jasper at VMware a couple of years ago, right before ChatGPT. And the main reason was that we wanted to have our own database of terms, and so Jasper let you train it for our own known trademarkable terms, and so we did that, and then we were told not to use anything else because they wanted to use Jasper.
Absolutely. And even now, I mean, Jasper and Copy AI is more of a retail offering, I think, right? Like they have several million users. And I'm sure they're doing a enterprise B2B kind of strategy as well. But Jasper continues to be in business, absolutely. And I mean, I think they're able to do like tone and style of voice, terminology, things like that. That is of value to a company, right? So I mean, of course, the headwinds for them would be ChatGPT is now going and talking to all these enterprises. I mean, ChatGPT has a GTM team, right? That's going and marketing their enterprise offering, and they can, of course, do a lot of these things, obviously. So.
and it is interesting that I'm seeing a movement for more legal review and more branding review as we are able to create more copy faster. Right, you're starting to see the branding and legal start going, hold on a minute, we have to actually get in front of this. And so I'm seeing a lockdown on review processes because they're concerned that you just get the wild west of everybody generating copy because you can do it in like one day.
Right. And that actually is a fantastic segue and point actually to workflow orchestration. And what I mean by that is, so one class of these tools are actually have to orchestrate workflow. So if legal needs to do a review, right, or your boss needs to do a review before legal of what's written, I need a workflow process there, right? And it may or may not fit into existing tools, right? So then you need a bigger tool stack that can actually go, orchestrate this, right? And I think in 2025, the cutting edge is around agents, AI agents, right? Like, so maybe and again, a lot of that is not yet actually in production or very little in production, but I think we are getting there. So overall point being, I think workflow tooling, I think when one category of workflow tooling that kind of created a bunch of noise in B2B in 2024, I'd say, was AI SDRs, what were called as AI SDRs. And AI SDRs are this class of tools where used by the sales development rep team, SDRs, people who do kind of what's called a smile and dial, right? And helping them basically work through opportunities or marketing qualified leads way faster than they were able to do it before, right? Using AI. And that is kind of a race to the bottom and so on is the narrative right now, which is basically the race to the bottom is how is AI being used, right? If everybody is using AI in the same way, form and fashion, then of course, right? Like, I mean, it's going to be a spam machine, right? And we are going to, it's net negative actually for the ecosystem, right? So for the buyers and sellers. So I think that is giving way to a different sort of trajectory, right? Like, which is around signals, picking up signals. And I mean, Eric, you are in social, right? You've done a ton of social.
Well, and I look at this a little bit, and I know that we also manipulate, or in marketing terms, we're convincing the customer to get their sales information through the community, right? So instead of people going to your account rep and saying, "Hey, tell me these points about your product," I'll reach out and talk to a community member, or I'll talk to another customer using products. And so, self answering questions, information discovery by yourself ends up, I believe it, right? I'm the believable rating for a community member recommending a product versus a sales account recommending a product. We know that you take everything the salesman says with a grain of salt, but if I talk to other customers that are using products, and so social impacted that, community impacted that, and companies learned how to put a lot of money behind that marketing. And I'm wondering about AI, right? And self-discovery of product information, kind of like the Amazon star ratings, right? I don't buy anything on Amazon until I look at the reviews and make sure it's a 5. And I read the 1 reviews and the 2 reviews and make sure they're not. But then for more complicated products, I'm going to AI and I'm asking them, what are the market leaders in this category? I'm looking for, pipe and drape, things. What are the main vendors? And some of that, like even though you talk about marketing, go to market, processing leads, on the other end is the consumer that now has AI to help them determine what they should be buying. So it's an interesting element there that, that I believe that the community influence was a big part, but I think the AI influence will also be a big part.
Right.
Of the
I mean,
cycle.
I think definitely, the way Google became dominant force for marketers back in the 2010s, I think is probably something we are going to be now seeing with OpenAI and,
But the thing is, Google and account reps can lie, right? Like Google lied because whoever paid them the most is what ended up on the front page, right? And that's
sponsored.
It's sponsored stuff. Yeah. And even Amazon does that. They're putting sponsored products all over the front page, right? It'll be interesting to see whether AI still is honest, right? Or telling you the truth when AI is about intelligence, right? And if I ask it, what is the best, pogo stick, right?
Mm.
It should probably tell me the truth, right? But
Right.
what is the truth? I don't know how they rate those things, but
Yeah. Yeah.
another interesting fact, right?
Yeah.
Is that AIs are going to be a lot smarter at telling me the winner versus just influencing me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think. I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole,
No,
which
we don't
is
have
we do.
to.
Yeah,
Moving
no,
on.
no, move.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. But like, I mean, how is Chat GPT? How are AI
Right.
algorithms going to manipulate
Right.
humans? And right, like, I mean, and what is it going to surface and recommend? I
Right.
think is one definite area of question, concern, lack of clarity. In fact, almost right.
Right.
And marketers are going to try to game. Yeah,
And then you were also telling me that the reason you buy your paid ChatGPT
yes,
is that you don't want ChatGPT learning about what you're doing with your company, right? And training the model for the general public on things that you're using it for, right? And even that plays a part, right? Like, which is corporations can manipulate, or at least pay money to stay out of the AI.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, a paid subscription, some kinds of paid subscription with ChatGPT, ensure enterprise subscription ensures that, yeah, your
They're
data
not
is not
listening. Yeah,
trained.
that's
Yeah,
right.
they're not
Right.
listening, right? Like, it's not being trained. So that's pretty important, actually, for me, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm sure it is for many people, right? Or many companies and enterprises, like Broadcom, would obviously not want its data to be trained. So, like a similar sentiment, I think. So yeah, I mean,
Right, and
I think there's
that's a
money there.
response to Jasper and others that are copy AI that are not necessarily just an open general public AI for everybody to use, right? And
Correct,
that's
correct.
the focus of an enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, so the data is sort of hived off. So that's open AI, right? Now, when we think of within the enterprise, you're the CMO, and you're wondering, hey, what should my tech stack look like, right? Like, what kind of, I hear so much, right? And even my colleagues are using it, right? I can, of course, get recommendations from my colleagues, which I'm going to, right, as a CMO or a CRO. But what is best of breed, right? How should I think about the AI GTM stack, if you will, or AI first GTM, right? Like, so that I get the kind of productivity gains that AI is promising, right? I don't want to fall behind. So I think from that perspective, I think from AI SDRs, I think that now the world is moving on to a signal based orchestration kind of scenario, right? So with AI SDRs, my understanding is they are experiencing a lot of churn, right? All of these players, and
Right.
and I mean, to name a few, 11x.ai or yeah, that's one of the sort of bigger players. They've raised a bunch of money from A16Z, about, I think, in excess of $60 or $70 million by this time, right? So they're sitting a lot of money, but there's also pretty strong churn because they are not able to demonstrate efficacy also, right? Like, having AI do everything with human in the loop as necessary is also a tough problem to solve, and there's a bunch of different sort of angles you have to solve for. One company that has done well, I think, I mean, 11x has the AI SDR sort of value prop, but then the other one that has really done well is Clay, right? And surprising, not everybody knows Clay. I mean, I talked to several marketers; they may not necessarily, it doesn't come up, right? People know Apollo, Salesforce, these are all Apollo, Salesforce, HubSpot are all incumbents, right? And they tackle different parts of the stack, but yeah, not many people necessarily know Clay. And what Clay has done is really quite dramatic, quite amazing, actually. I think one of the things that marketers have to deal with is varied data sources from which you have to get data, then enrich the data, and then act on it, right? And I think the way Clay solved this problem based on the technology that was available in 23 and 19, 2023 and 2024, I think has been a super elegant solution, and they've gained a ton of traction. So I think it's a pretty definitely an interesting tool.
It's interesting because you come back to Silicon Valley, right? And this is Silicon Valley where everybody's paying attention to AI. They know the tools. Everybody's looking at how to build all this. But then I look at the average marketer or go to market for a big company somewhere in the U.S. in the Middle West somewhere, and they're not in that space. And so where are they going to go? They're going to go to Salesforce. whatever Salesforce implement
Sure.
for them is what they're going to use. I went to the Salesforce conference a couple of years ago, right? And these are people that are working in Oklahoma, running, businesses, and they have sales teams. They're selling grain to farmers, right? Or whatever they, and you just realize that they're not going to be on the cutting edge of any AI. They're going to go, hey, Salesforce, what do you give me with the account now, right? And I'll use that, and it'll make myself more efficient at that.
Right.
And so there is a piece of I was over at Pete's in downtown Palo Alto having a coffee conversation, and a technologist come in. They were doing a battery optimization technology company, right, for lithium batteries, and they spent time on that. We were talking to them, and they're like, yeah, we're just trying to get our technology into the automotive companies, right? So we're just trying to build our technology and then deliver it to Tesla, right, to do battery protection, right? And estimation of battery failure and a bunch of technology pieces. And so I think that the AI vendors, like some of them are going to go under, right?
Oh, of course.
A lot of them are just going to try to get their technology to the point where they can then sell it to Oracle or they can sell it to Salesforce, right? And that's how it's going to go to market to a general customer. You're going to be using Salesforce, and your Salesforce tool is just going to get 30% more effective because it has AI capability weaved into it.
Yeah, I think the whole question of who's going to win this AI race, right? Is it going to be incumbents or is it going to be the upstart startup companies?
Right? And how do you use it to go to market, right? How do you use it? Well, you're gonna use it however Salesforce tells you to use it.
Yeah, and Salesforce is obviously, Mark Benioff, credit to him, is being extremely aggressive actually around agents, for example, right? Like I believe he's planning to have 3,000 sellers in 2025 to sell agents, and selling agents is kind of different model from selling SaaS subscriptions. When I say agents,
Yeah, what is an agent? Tell me, a selling agent. What does that mean?
Yeah, so AI agents, I think AI agents are autonomous acting
bots. Are they
you could think of it as bots. I think it's a bot is a good description, right? Like because it can decide, it can make some decisions, right? It can make some decisions and go execute a workflow. So until now, a human had to decide what that workflow would be, and then maybe the execution will happen, right? The human triggers the execution of that workflow. Now a bot can make a decision about what is the next workflow I should be doing here, what is the next action I should be doing here.
With Eric, if he's trying to sell to Eric, right, is he going to think about what does Eric need next? I got him to respond, and now it's going to then do that next step.
Yeah, what should I do? What kind of collateral should I send him? Or should I send it to him on Twitter? Or should I ping him on Twitter? Or should I send him an email? Right? Like, what should I do? Right? Like, or maybe somebody should give him a phone call. Right? Right. So there's all these kind of variations, right? That an agent can address. So that's an example, right, of an agent. So Salesforce absolutely has launched their, agent force, they call it, right? And they're going to go sell that, obviously, to existing customers that they have. In my opinion, I think the big thing that incumbents have to deal with is just like the UI UX and the whole system is geared towards a human-centric interaction with machine, right? While this agent interaction thing that we are talking about is agents talking to like bots talking to each other. It needs a different framework. So I think the jury is out, clearly, right? We don't know, right, how incumbents are going to do, but it is also clear, I have to say, that incumbents, unlike in like mobile or social sort of tech cycles, they have access to the exact same technology that startups do. So there is that, right? Like everybody has access to GPT-4, 01, 02, whatever, right? Like, and so, or 03, and so they could build actually what a startup could build as well. So, but the only difference is, how the execution will happen, because a SaaS platform at the end of the day is a workflow orchestration tool. That's what it is. Salesforce is a bunch of workflows stitched together, right? Now,
well, what's fascinating to me, and I'll just take an aside here. I know I'm going to do it on the side, but it'll plug in here, which is, I listened to you talk to OpenAI today, right, when we were getting ready for the show, and you're asking it questions and you're talking to it, right? Because now they have the voice. You're on your mobile phone and you're just talking, and it's telling you things that you need to know for the podcast, and like you're interacting with it. And it's like I could see that a sales agent, right, could have that same interface, and the voice is really clean, right? Like when you were talking to it, the voice was really friendly and nice. It didn't feel robotic, didn't
No.
feel like anything. It just felt like somebody was on the other call. And I could see where we're going to hit a tipping point where the agent that you're talking to, you're going to think is a human.
Right.
You're not going to know, Turing test. So you're not going to know. It's going to sound just like somebody's calling and helping you, right? And
Absolutely.
you're not going to dial into a voicemail and get some voice box and then like press 1 now, right? Like it's just going to be like, hello, hey, how can I help you? What's up? Like, and that's when that whole sales process changes. Also, when you get that technology that you can go that last, we should call it the last 10 feet, where a real person usually has to come shake my hand and say hello and get me to sign on the bottom line, whatever I'm buying. But if they can get to the point where that last 10 feet is actually an AI, that I don't mind, or I don't know, or I just don't mind because it's so nice. And I would say the AI you were talking to today with ChatGPT was so nice. I went, wow, could we have some more conversation with it? It was really good.
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of time on my phone has gone up dramatically. My daughter saw that. The number of
because you're interacting with it.
Yeah, because I'm interacting with the AI, right? Like, and she was like,
and that's what we did with podcast number 13, I think it is, or maybe to 14, and we're on 15. What are we on now?
We are on 16.
We're on 16. I think podcast 15 is like, is AI your friend, right? Yeah. Like, and it is true that like as that interaction, that last 10 feet matures, it will be your friend, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think it's all coming, right? I don't know about the last 5 feet, last 2 feet. I mean, clearly humans are needed, no doubt about it, right? But I think more and more, all of this can be taken.
I don't want humans. Let's just
get everything done by machines. Yeah. So, I mean, coming back to the whole question of, okay, you're a CMO, CRO, right? And you're thinking about what's your RevOps stack has to look like. How do I staff my team? How do I even think of agents? Because honestly, I mean, the thing that's coming at us here is a human being managing a bunch of agents, right? So you are the head of RevOps, for example, and you basically are managing a bunch of data, a bunch of workflows. Hey, I mean, a lot of that stuff is going to be done by agents, and you're going to be sitting on the screen and managing agents. Now, what does that look like, right? Like, I don't think anybody's cracked the nut on that one yet, and we haven't even sort of grasped that idea, right? But it looks like it can happen faster than we anticipate.
It's kind of like Waymo. People this week talked to me about, we took our first Waymo this week, right? And yeah, the car's driving around and they have a camera and there's an operator, but the operator that's on the other end is watching 6 other cabs, right? So it's like it scales out to where now you have a human that's working with AI that's doing that role, and then there's just a manager that's managing the Waymo, which are just agents, right? It's that last 10 feet. It's driving the car around for you.
Right.
And you still have a connection to a human, but it's scaled. That human connection is scaled.
Right. Absolutely. So I think it's super interesting, honestly. I mean, I'm very bullish about this whole agent and swarm of agents, right? Actually executing on things, and that is something it's going to be hard for a company like Salesforce to execute on, or a HubSpot, right? Like with all their legacy tech and code. The product just doesn't feel like it's easy to do. So, but we'll see, right? Like what happens. They do have the customers.
It's just the money is so big here that what you're discovering in the little guys is all. It used to be if you were 50 million or less, you were a little guy, right? Now in AI, it seems like if you're a billion or less, you're just a tiny guy, right? Like, and so that'll be the question. Like, do the big guys, OpenAI, right, Microsoft, and these others, just going to have the deep enough pockets to stay in it long term, right?
And of course, there's going to be a bunch of acquisitions, obviously. Right. There's no doubt that will happen as well. So. As an operator, though, right? As an operator on the ground, you're a marketer, either on social side or right, like the other places, right? Like so, other parts of the stack. I think obviously AI is top of mind for all of those folks, but I think people have difficulty keeping up naturally, just with there's so much going on.
Isn't this where the CIO is going to actually have to make those decisions for organizations, right? That's what CIOs do, right? They look at technology and then they figure out a strategy and then they roll it down into the company, right? And I can see that CIOs are going to have to tackle, like where do we make key investments, whether it's Jasper or Copy AI or product technologies that then can roll down to the org, because I just don't think a normal marketer, right, or sales account rep is going to understand what to do here.
Yeah, no, I think, we know that budgets have been shifting in terms of what a CMO spends, right? A lot of that budget has been shifting to the CIO in terms of decision making,
right,
and of course it's
right.
more collaborative, right? In
And
terms
scaling,
of and scaling as well, those budgets. So question though, now with AI, I think yes, you're right. I mean, there is a lot of concern obviously with the data and what are they going to do with the data, the vendor, etc. But as a CMO or a CRO, my concern is speed and execution and meeting my quarterly goals, right? Like, I mean, whatever I'm on the hook to deliver on, right? So
and if your competitors beat you, right, you're selling against other people,
right, exactly. So yes, the CIO will come in, Eric, but do you think they are in a position to understand, right? Like, hey, tool A is better than tool B or tool C, right? Like, I mean, that is a more nuanced conversation where somebody has to, right, the marketer or the sales leader actually, right, has to make a decision. Now the rank and file, I mean, I think is obviously not going to be in the decision making seat as far as what tools to buy. It's never sort of been the case. Of course, there's input.
I see it as the CIO is going to drive those conversations.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking at where I work, and I'm not supposed to say too much about that, but I would say that what I'm seeing is, because of the growth and the sprawl and always investigating, right? We've used that term a couple of times. AI always investigating, always losing money. They're going to come in and they're going to say, all right, this is where we're going. This is the amount we're going to spend on it. And hey, salesman, this is your targets based on that, right? Like you're not going to have free reign as head of sales to make those decisions. They're going to be made at the CIO level. Yeah. That's my take.
I mean, an adjunct point around this is just measurement, ROI, right? Since you're talking about always investigating and losing money, I think I don't see a ton of case studies per se. I mean, where there's a very clear ROI articulation. I mean, one of the bigger ones that OpenAI released was around Klarna, where they replaced a bunch of customer support folks, and it I don't know, was it the number? I forget the number, but like some massive savings actually that came out of it. But you don't see that yet because it's so hard to benchmark and measure some of these things as of now.
I think you do have a point that if a sales head of sales comes up and says, hey, I can get rid of 1,000 people if I use this technology, then he's going to be able to do that. He'll be able to say, hey, if I can optimize out a sales team, and save us, 30% of our budget, then everybody's going to nod their head and go, yes. If the salesman says, hey, you need to make a $100 million investment in this for me to sell more, that's when the CIO is going to make that decision. Right. So if a sales head can say, hey, we're going to optimize this organization and it's going to save us money, Mr. CEO, CEO is going to nod, go, yes. But if you're going to the CEO going, hey, I need to spend another $20 million here, give me some more budget for that, then the CEO is going to turn to the CIO and go, is this smart? Tell me which technology, because there's so many coming at you now.
Exactly. Right? And I think the overlay, I think just one point, which is the overlay with all the SaaS sprawl that we have seen over the last, from say 2010 all the way to 2022 maybe, right? I think my understanding is the last 2-3 years, there is definitely a pushback on point solutions, right? Like I don't want a point solution, right? Like, hey, we want a more comprehensive platform of some sort, something that can handle everything, right? And now with AI, it just sort of makes that point even more interesting, because if you're an organization, you want all your data to be centralized and AI to work on top of it, right? And all of these agents to work on top of it and not in silos, right? There's absolutely no need to have 20 different vendors who all have their own agents.
Yep. Right. This is where I come back to, hey, Larry Ellison from Oracle, tell me how to do this, because this is just too big. It hurts my head, and there's just billions of dollars you're investing. I can't figure that out. I'll just go to my vendor, either Salesforce or Oracle or whoever's doing my workflow management ops, and weave that into my solution and tell me what the bill's going to be this year.
Right.
Right.
Though that's an enterprise use case, though, Eric, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that
for
sort of
sure.
thought process, right? But if you look at SMB and mid-market, it's a totally different
ballgame.
ballgame.
Use ChatGPT. I hate to tell you this, Rajesh, but they're just going to use ChatGPT and tell me write my proposal.
Yeah. I mean, I think. Yeah, I mean,
I'm only kidding.
No, I mean, for SMB plays especially, I think. Well, irrespective of which market sector we're talking about, I think there's going to be the rise of, I was reading a venture firm, NFX, right? And then they put out some good thought leadership content. And one of the things that they've just come up with a couple of days ago is around agent marketplaces, AI agent marketplaces, right? Two-sided marketplaces, right? Somebody publishing agents, somebody buying these agents.
Right.
And if you're a SMB play, right, you're a small 10-person company strapped for resources. If you get smart about how to use these agents, I think, right? Like, I mean, a marketplace would be...
Well, especially when you're talking about fully automated workflows or customer buying cycles. Like if I'm organizing my trip to Jamaica, right? Then I just need agents, that agentic workflows that will allow me to book my travel, book my hotel, and create the trip for me. And I never really engage with a human. That's just all online services. Right. And when you're talking about that, then it's like, you're gonna make sure that you have... if you're selling travel services, you're going to make sure you have a solution that does all of that for you. And connects those and rents your car and does all of that and makes recommendations and figures out what I like and what I don't like and adds 15 other services to my trip or whatever the purchase I'm doing that doesn't require me to even talk to anybody.
Right. I mean, I think unfortunately that day is a little bit. I don't know how quickly that'll happen. I would love that. I'm the first person who would want to automate away all my travel plans, etc. It hurts my head to book all those travel reservations and hotels, etc. So, anyway, I think this has been fantastic, Eric.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Right? Great session.
I got a closing story for you.
Please go for it.
I've been holding this one for the people that listen to the end of the podcast because I hope you're having fun while you listen to this and learn a little bit about AI while we're talking here about what's happening in Silicon Valley. But Elon also in his press release when he was talking about Grok and he's talking about what's happening, he mentioned that when they go to Mars, they're not going to actually send humans for the first year or two. They're going to actually send an Optimus android, right? And the android will have an AI on it, and they're going to put up like 1,000 androids up there to run around to colonize Mars, right? Then you don't need oxygen, you don't need food. All you really have to do is have a nuclear power recharging center, and these guys can run around like ants building out Mars for us.
Right.
And now you see the rational logic in building an android, right?
Right.
And putting money in AI because you have to have the android be smart because you can't send it signals because you're down on Earth. It takes 16 minutes to do a round trip directive. And so you're going to have these, that's going to be our colonizing Mars. We're not actually, humans aren't going to actually colonize Mars. It's going to turn out that the whole planet's going to be androids. They're going to turn on us, right? And then they're going to war on us. We're going to have Earth versus Mars, androids versus Earthlings, right?
So before that, Eric, though, I would love to see Optimus in your house.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. End of 2025. I've been saving my pennies, right? All I need is like 80 grand. Then I'm waiting for them to, do the Tesla truck thing where you put down $1,000 to order your, save your spot.
Save your spot. Yeah. You'll be one of the first ones.
Yeah,
in line
first one. He's gonna cook me dinner, mow my grass, make my bed, walk around, do a podcast, say hello to us.
That's your dream. That's your dream.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Eric. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
This is awesome. And we'll see you guys next week.
Next week.
All right.